Connor from Soccer Without Borders, and today we're going to talk about your winning proposal in the GrantStation contest that they held. Your proposal was ranked #1, and I so much appreciate you being here to talk with folks and grant writing students about grant writing. So what motivated you to enter this contest?
We had been subscribers to GrantStation, and they aggregate grant opportunities in an email all the time. So I felt like I'd been, I don't know, following their work. And grant writing and reporting is a bigger part of everyone's job than I think people realize. And so it was actually really exciting when I saw like, oh, something that took a lot of time that is a big part of my job could be sort of valuable or recognized on its own, not just for the content. Obviously I believe the program that I applied to the funding for is worthy of recognition and investment, but then to sort of look at that same process as like having value in and of itself, the proposal itself, I don't know, kind of made me feel like a student again, like I'm submitting a paper for a grade, I guess. And it mattered less what it was about and more about the quality of the paper. So yeah, it was fun, and I figured I'd give it a try. It was very low barrier to entry. It was like just send it along, and I actually, to be honest, forgot that I had applied, and then months later got this email that said, you're a finalist, and then you won. So it was cool.
Yeah, and so how did that feel when you found out that you were the winner?
I shared this with the founder of GrantStation also, but this particular grant that I submitted was due like right after New Year's one year. And so it was one of those where like I spent a lot of my holiday break on it. And so it felt very validating to be like this thing that was, obviously I cared about what I was writing, but at the time I felt very frustrated about when it was due. To have it sort of come back around and be such a positive celebratory thing. It felt really validating that particular proposal could kind of have a second life that was positive for the organization. So
yeah, I imagine that there's been some awareness about your organization that's grown just from having your winning proposal out there, and I certainly had not yet heard about your organization and then learned, and you're doing amazing work. So have you found that a lot of new folks have found you as a result of the contest?
I think the connection to GrantStation itself so far has been a real positive. There's a founder and an executive director, and the founder, winning the prize comes with some time with her to explore some potential other funding opportunities. And I'm hopeful that with more eyes getting on the proposal, that it'll spark some interest in our program in Nicaragua. Soccer Without Borders has direct service programming in Nicaragua, in Uganda, and across the United States. So there's also other geographic areas of interest, or anyone interested in the intersection of youth development and sport. I hope they'll check us out, because this proposal was about a specific program that we have, but there's a lot more to it, and not everybody sort of sees Soccer Without Borders as a holistic youth development and education vehicle. And so my hope is that is not only beneficial to Soccer Without Borders, but also everybody that's using soccer as a tool for youth development and social change, that it'll raise awareness of our whole sector.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. About how long did it take you to write this grant?
So first of all, I want to acknowledge that like nobody, if you can avoid it, don't write anything alone. So I worked on this grant with our development manager, Bridget Black, who helped me to set it up. It's a pretty lengthy, just wrapping your mind around everything they were asking for. It's up to 20 pages of narrative. I think I counted over 40 different questions within it. In each section, there was attachments, there was a budget. I believe there was letters of support. So there was a lot to even wrap your mind around. So Bridget from the start helped me kind of scope it out and make a plan of attack to get it done. And that is so, so helpful, so that you can really like dive into the narrative and figure out the narrative arc and the budget and what will apply for. So I really want to appreciate her. I think beginning to end, we spent about 3 weeks, not all day, every day for 3 weeks, but it was on our radar for 3 weeks. And in the final stage, it was definitely like a full day, like 10-hour day effort to kind of like pull it all together, make sure the arc was there. So I don't know if I could estimate between the two of us, definitely over 40 hours. Like it was hefty. And that's why I put it forward for this award, because it, when you put that much care into something, it's nice to, it's kind of sad when it's like just a one-off. I sometimes wish you could submit the same application 20 times to 20 funders, but they all have their different structures, and you can reuse what you can, but people can tell when you're reusing and cutting and pasting, like, a well-crafted narrative, it flows throughout. So yeah, it was definitely time consuming.
Yeah. Yeah. And to speak to that, have you heard much about trust-based philanthropy? And so maybe there is a change that's coming in terms of being able to submit our proposals to multiple
I would love that.
grant makers, and trying to cut down on our time so that we can do more of the good work that you're doing out there, helping youth learn soccer and build self-esteem.
And I think from an equity lens, also thinking about our relationship to our program staff in Nicaragua and our director in Nicaragua, and sort of where philanthropy lives and the structures that it operates under, and then how a Spanish-speaking community organization could even apply. Like, there's not anyone in our staff in Nicaragua who could have applied directly. And I don't say that to throw any one funder under the bus. I think in general, trust-based philanthropy, plus looking at the expectations of the writers. I have a master's degree and in social sciences and an undergrad degree in a writing heavy major, and still it was long and hard to do. And it's like, if you sort of require that level of training in order to submit something, how are we going to shift power and investment dynamics in communities that have been underinvested in, plus language barriers, plus access of technology, all these layers.
Right.
So yeah, I think about that a lot, and how I hope it came through in the proposal, how I was not just advocating for our work in Nicaragua, but also I tried to center our staff and kids as the heroes of the story, not the American writing the proposal.
Yeah. And that was
They
actually,
are like, that wasn't a, that wasn't a play. They are. And I wish that they could tell their stories themselves to this group. But that's not, the way philanthropy is structured right now.
right. And that was one of the questions I was looking forward to asking you, is about the storytelling. And I noticed in the proposal that your organization received an award for basically not using a white savior narrative. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we invited researchers to come to Nicaragua, because early on, our program, when I first went, late 2007, early 2008, there was no girls or women's sports. There was one women's team that was playing there. And so the idea of a student athlete, or unlocking the benefits of sport that has been so prominent in the US post Title IX, like all these opportunities, and where women advance in sport, you see advancements in business and education. So like, that was all just starting there, if that's generous, like it didn't exist. And so in order to have women coaches at that time, you had to import them. Like, there wasn't local women. There was women who had played, but there was not women coaches. And so for a long time, we had this dynamic of local male coaches and foreign women like American women living in Nicaragua. And that dynamic on its face would sound very white savory. And so we invited these researchers to come and challenge us on how we were framing it, how we were equipping those women to be there, how I was relating to it. And we got really positive feedback that when those dynamics are approached with an authentic collaboration in mind, with we are two parties coming together who have had different access to resources, and this is what we're bringing. And the goal is to develop local women to lead it, which is what we have now. That you can overcome that. And that was a lesson I learned very on in our Nicaragua work. Was I grew up, my educational background, you read White Man's Burden, and like that was the sort of orientation towards this work, was like, go and step out of the way. There was either the two options were either you're an org imposing yourself on a local community, or you're an org that goes, spends a week or two and then leaves and gets out of the way. And like neither of those options actually works. You need to be in it together and authentically collaborate towards a shared vision. And that's what we've done. And I felt really proud to tell that story through this narrative, because the women who are leading it now are just incredible. And more than 2/3 of them came through our program. I met them in 2008 as participants, and now they're coaching and paying it forward to girls in their own community. And that was always what we hoped it could be. And that takes time. Like it's not something you can achieve year one. So,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me talking on that. I'm sorry, I'm boring your students with this.
No, this is something that we talk a lot about, and using empowering language and storytelling and making sure that the participants are the heroes of the story. So this is extremely relevant. Has your language that you use in your grants changed a little bit over the years? Can you talk?
It definitely has. I am probably not brave enough to go back to my early grant applications and check myself on that. But I wrote this one from a first person plural perspective, like we do this is our vision and story. And I've sort of alternated on that, of whether I speak in a third person, Soccer Without Borders does this, they do this. And the we just feels more true for us. Like this is a we effort. And, putting in quotes from participants, naming leaders by name. I think those are little things you can do to recognize the humanity in all of this, because sometimes philanthropy and grant writing can be very impersonal and at worst dehumanizing of people. It becomes about reducing kids to numbers. How can you get from 100 to 200 or 200 to 500? And it's like, these are all, yes, there's a section that you have to do that and share your numbers because people care about numbers. And to us, like they're each a story and a human. And so you got to try to balance that. And I think I'm working in the organization I was writing about. So I empathize that when you're an outside grant writer and you don't know who Veronica is, or who, that it's a different skill to maybe be able to do that. So I'd actually be curious your thoughts on that. How do you, when you're supporting another organization that you're not intimately involved with, how do you gain that understanding or sort of infuse that humanity when you're a little bit on the side of it?
Yeah. I mean, it is a challenge when you're not directly working within. The more you can actually go and spend time, in the on site, in location, and I think makes your writing so much more richer and true and honest. And I noticed that the quotes that you used in your grant proposal really showcased individuals who are on a journey. And so you didn't take a quote from here's how bad life was in the past. It was you avoided that, which is I think awesome. And instead it was I'm on this journey, and Soccer Without Borders has helped me along on this journey that I've already been on. And that's exactly what I want my students to do. And
I hope that, I wish that could become not just a norm, but almost a rule in grant writing. Like we have to move past saviorism. We have to move past the like shock value of like, this is how bad it is. It reminds me of like those old commercials that were like poverty porn that you're showcasing. And it's like, this is not that. These women, Natalia, I don't know what type of person I would be. She is incredible, and she was born into a circumstance different than the one I was born into. And I think that makes her the strongest, most resilient person I know. And that should be how she shows up in an application. Not, there are some stats in here about the conditions of Nicaragua, but they're not tied to the people, right? It's like,
right.
These are the conditions that exist, and these people that we're highlighting are on a journey. I really appreciate that, and a strengths-based approach, a positive showcasing of lifting up the people in the story as the heroes of the story, and not the victims of a story. Because I wish that rule could be adopted across the board, and I wish that on the reader side they wouldn't be craving the other. Like I hope funders that are reading grant proposals are not craving victim stories.
Right. Yeah, well, there was actually a research study done at Stanford University that looked at the language nonprofits were using, and it found that not only did program participants have better outcomes when empowering language was used, but that donors are equally motivated to give when empowering language is used as opposed to shaming language. So that's what I'm teaching my students. And I'm hoping that everyone can get on this. And I've been going around the nation teaching a workshop, at conferences on using empowering language with storytelling. So I hope I'm doing my part to get the message out. The other thing that I was really impressed with in your grant proposal was the evaluation section. And it was deep. And you guys are doing a lot of work around evaluation. So I was hoping you could just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think evaluation, everywhere from monitoring to like long-term impact evaluation, is a continuum. I was taught that very early in my time as executive director at Soccer Without Borders, because I think when you come out of an educational environment, an academic environment, everything goes to like this rigorous study, and that's all you can, that's the be all end all of evaluation. It's like there is actually concrete steps you can take, and a journey you can take as an organization, from measurement, monitoring, like what are we doing, what are the inputs, and how are we collecting feedback. I think something we did really well early on was measure the process side from the start. So we designed our program to be evidence-based, like what's needed here, what is realistic for a sport-based program to achieve, like what are realistic areas that we can affect. Because when you're working in a high need environment, there's so much intersectionality between healthcare and education and financial need. So pick something that we can actually, that for our size, for our investment, is right sized to us. Measure, learn the evidence side, rigorously measure that what we are doing aligns with that. So if you can show, like, people smarter than me have proven already that mentoring relationships matter, and kids are more likely to experience all of these academic benefits, all of these mental health benefits, if they have a positive mentor role model in their life. A coach can be that, but we need to show through feedback and rigorous monitoring that we've created the conditions for that relationship to form, and that the kids actually see those coaches as mentors, that they feel that way. This is someone I can trust. This is a safe space. And so that's one example of right size evaluation, right? Is to understand what's possible and understand what you're trying to, what's realistic, what are realistically the best outcomes your program could create. What's our contribution to the ecosystem of a better, situation. And then do that and show that you're doing that, and show that you can maintain it over time consistently. I think that is one thing that stood out, is we knew that there's a cliff in Nicaragua after fourth grade. Tons of kids drop out. There's another cliff after primary school. The reasons for that, there's some difference of understanding, right? Like, is it all financial? Are girls more affected by that? Because if families have to choose between sending their son or daughter, they'll choose their son. Is it familial obligations? Girls are more likely to have to stay home and take care of siblings or work in the market, or all of these things we're seeing firsthand. But for a small organization with $120,000 budget for this project or less back then, really going to hire like an evaluation team to evaluate this? No, we're going to say, what is the research telling us? How can we align with that? And then can we measure that we're doing this consistently and pick realistic outcomes to track? So we decided on things like academic advancement. There's no question that every single year of completing school beyond fourth grade will have a benefit. Have we proven that with our own, have we measured the economic output of girls that were in our program 10 years ago to now? No, because we haven't done that yet. And they're also in their 20s. It's not
Right.
But my personal belief about it is that every community org should not have to bear the burden of measuring and reproving the same thing. Like if this has been proven in aggregate that at a country level, every year of schooling adds an estimated 10% lifetime to your lifetime income, we should be able to say, hey, our job is to keep the kids in school. That's our job.
Right.
Our job is not to like reprove the same thing that's already proven. So, that to me is us doing our part to create the best possible conditions for the girls in our program to reach their full potential. That's our mission, not to contribute new research to the world. So I'm hoping that that's what you sensed when you read the evaluation section. I think sometimes grant writers and orgs feel pressure to pretend they're having this like massive long-term impact and it's proven. It's like, you got to pick what's right sized and say, here, this is what we can control. This is what our program's designed to do. We've put thought into that. We can show that we're doing what we say we do. And that for us is our contribution. And I was able in this particular grant to tie our small contribution to things like the Sustainable Development Goals, to things like Ernst & Young's research on the benefit of sport for future women leaders in business and education. And to me, A plus B equals C. If like,
Right.
yeah, if we designed it with intention, we're rigorously measuring that we're doing what we say we do. And then you can draw that link and say, this is why it's important. I think that needs to be enough. And I really appreciated that, we got positive feedback twice. So I think that my advice to folks would just be, don't try to do too much or pretend it's doing too much. Like, be proud of what you are doing and show the thought you've put into that. And M&E should be mostly about feedback and making yourself better. Like, if you create a culture of collecting the information from the kids in order to make the program better, that's when you're going to get better. If you're only collecting information because you got to report it to somebody who will never see, doesn't really care, that's a problem. Like, it should be stuff you actually want to know and improve.
Yeah. Yeah. So Mary, you're the founder of, or one of two founders of Soccer Without Borders. You were a professional soccer player. And so you have been able to take something that you found on early in your life that
Yeah.
meant something to you. You created this organization, this movement. Tell us a little bit more about that and just like your pathway, your journey, and what that means to you now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really a beautiful thing when you can take something that's not just an interest, but is like a part of who you are, uh, and find that it has value to share in the world. And I truly, during my playing career, I didn't fully understand the privilege I had enjoyed as a post Title IX student athlete in the United States. Like I knew it, and we would often meet the women who had trailblazed before, and we're like, oh, that's nice, thanks for your work. But it's a real, like, what the 99ers, what Julie Foudy and Mia Hamm and Brianna Scurry, like what they did paved the way for my adult life. And there were women who came before them, and there were women who came before them, and Billie Jean King, and all this history. And so for me, it was such an aha moment, actually. I was finishing my playing career. I'd gotten into college coaching, and I knew that soccer mattered to me, but actually I wasn't quite I'm going to travel the world and try to play until I can no longer walk. Like I always loved the game most for the friendships and for the way that it is this little microcosm of the world and of people's dynamics. I had sort of a sociological interest in soccer. And so Soccer Without Borders, when I met Ben Gucciardi, I just was like, this is the most beautiful expression of soccer that there ever could be. And it gave me an avenue to explore this feeling of wanting to pay it forward, that like somebody had broken glass ceilings so that I could play where I played and be drafted to a professional league and all this stuff. And people need to carry the torch, because the work of equity is not over. And on a global context, at that time, it was really just beginning. Like there were very few places where women had access to the sport that's called the global game. On the African continent at the time, just 3% of soccer players were women. Like that's not a global game. That's a men's global game. And so there was so much work to be done. And it was just such an aha moment, to realize that this sport I had been a part of forever, since I was 4, was actually one of the greatest social change mechanisms on earth. Like if you can get to gender equality in soccer, you can change the world, because 5 billion people follow soccer. Like it's insane. Like what else in the world do 5 billion people engage in? Many of them men who care about it more than anything, like are crying, are cheering,
Mhm.
if you can achieve gender equality in soccer, you can achieve it anywhere. So it became this pathway for me, that building the organization just felt, that's not what came first. Like having something in the world that I wanted to change came first, and then learning how to build the organization was like a have to. I literally would like go to Barnes and Noble and read books on nonprofit management, because I had no idea what I was doing. But what I did know was that there was an interest and a need and that we had the best tool, in my opinion, on earth to do it, to do this. Everywhere I went, when I picked up a soccer ball and played, you turn heads of men, because it's just not something they had seen. So I was like, there's something here. We almost had like the product first, and then we had to back into building an organization. And I can tell you there was many missteps on the way. But people, yeah, if anybody of your students is sort of thinking of that, there's a real problem they want to solve or a vision that they have, and it resonates not just with their intellectual interests, but with their like, who do I want to be in the world? What's the change I want to be in the world? Then maybe building an organization is for you. There's also a lot of organizations out there too. So like not everyone has to build one. You can join one and amplify it or make it better. Yeah, I don't know if there's a specific part of org building you want to talk about, but
No,
I
that
sort
was
of backed
perfect.
into the part. I didn't set out to build a nonprofit, and I certainly had no training to do that. I had to teach myself a lot, including grant writing.
Yeah, that was my final question. Are you a self-learned grant writer? Did you go to Barnes and Nobles and read a bunch of books on grant
I
writing?
did read on grant writing also. So I was an undergrad, I was a philosophy major, and people always say it's like, what are you going to do with that? But essentially you're crafting arguments. That's what you're doing. So that really helped me in grant writing. And I did a sociology degree for grad school, and that social science research side, the crafting the budget and outcomes, that really helped. So I do feel like my educational background gave me the foundations to self-teach. And so I can't speak to like, if I didn't have those foundations, I probably would have needed a much more intensive teaching, to gain all of that. But I felt like I had these foundations to build on, and then I just needed to kind of understand the building blocks of grant writing. And to be honest, the thing that helped the most is having an organization worth funding, because that, like when you say,
Yeah.
okay, you have to pull in M&E data, well, have you collected it or are you making it up? Like what? So having strong financials to pull in, having strong M&E data to pull in, having thoughtful program design, and all of that stuff, all those building blocks means that every grant, even if you're sitting in your room writing it by yourself, it's a team effort no matter what, because you're pulling on everybody's work in order to craft it. So I had a lot of foundations to build on. I also attended like every webinar I could. You want to hear what people are saying and doing. There's such nuance between government grants and foundation grants, and so definitely always learning. But I didn't take a course or a certificate before starting. I just sort of started and learned from rejection and rejected from a lot of grants. So I think coming from a sports background helps. It's like, how do you get your 10,000 hours? You got to practice. So
Right.
I hope I don't have 10,000 hours of grant writing, but I probably do.
Do you have someone at your organization that reads your writing and gives you feedback on it?
I always try to have a second reader. Ideally, it's not my wife. It's ideally a colleague, but if it's too late at night, that could be it. Yeah, we always try to have a second reader, even just for typos. And worst case scenario, if you don't have that, read it out loud. I will read it out loud to myself and see where I make any sense.
Yeah, great. So you have a webinar coming up. Tell us about that.
So as a part of this GrantStation prize, we're going to be talking about the proposal. There'll be some of the judges from the competition will be there and kind of asking me questions and sharing kind of their perspective on what they looked for. So hopefully it'll be useful in breaking down some of the different elements that go into grant writing. We're also going to talk a little bit about just where to start, like what we did before I even put pen to paper or digital pen to paper. Yeah, it should be a great. It's 2 p.m. Eastern time on October 18th, and it's free, and would love to see anybody there. Hopefully it's another chance to dive into these building blocks.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Mary. We'll see you soon at that next webinar and really appreciate you talking with us today. Thanks.
Thanks, Allison.